Hello my dear students. Last class we have discussed about Roland Barthes. So today we are continuing with the discussion of Roland Barthes and we will finish the discussion of Roland Barthes. And we are looking more into science today, semiotics today. Let's get into the slides. Roland Barthes was a semiotician. He was interested in the process of meaning making, how science gets their meaning. He was interested in the process of signification of the mechanisms by which meanings are produced, how meanings are produced from science, also known as semiotics. Semiology or semiotics is defined as a science. It is a science of science, science in the Shastram, that studies the political life of science within a particular time and place. So that is synchronic analysis or the system of possible and impossible meanings. Semiology examines rhetorical strategies and the structure of language through which meanings are secured and reiterated. Semioticians classify science and science systems in relation to the way they are transmitted. They classify science and science system. This process of making and transmitting meaning, depends upon certain codes. These codes may be some noises or letters, words, body movements, or even something as general as the clothes they wear. സോ ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു പെൺകുട്ടി കല്യാണത്തിൻ്റെ സാരിയും ഡ്രസ്സൊക്കെ ഇട്ടിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്നു, നിറച്ച ഓർണമെൻറ്റ്സ് ഒക്കെ ഇട്ടിട്ട് തലയിൽ സിന്ദൂരം ഒക്കെ ഇട്ടിട്ട് നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ വി നോ ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ഹർ ഡേ എന്ന് നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റും. ആൻഡ് വെറുതെ നമ്മളൊരു സിന്ദൂരത്തിൻ്റെ മാത്രം ഒരു റെഫറൻസ് എടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ആ സിന്ദൂരം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് കല്യാണം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ആ ഒരു സ്ത്രീ കല്യാണം കഴിഞ്ഞു എന്നുള്ള അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു സിമ്പലാണ്. ഓക്കെ, ഗോട്ട് ദ പോയിന്റ്. എവറിത്തിങ് വി look around, everything we see around is a sign. Empire of Science is another work. He offers his talks on culture, society, art, literature, language, and iconography, the sign-oriented realities and fantasies of the country Japan. As per it, we have seen the work which is published in 1970 is his structural analysis Sarrasine, and Sarrasine is a short story by Honoré de Balzac, French writer. Barthes methodically moves through the text of the story. Remember the codes he has used, 5 codes, denoting where and how different codes of meaning function. Each code is like a light or is like a voice which speaks to the reader in a different way. When we analyze the work in one particular code, a symbolic code, it gives one meaning. If we analyze the work in cultural code, symbolic or cultural code, it gives one meaning. If we analyze in semantic code, it gives another meaning. Okay, and different layers of meaning can be taken. Barthes methodically moves through the text of the story, denoting where and how different codes of meaning function. Barthes' study made a major impact on literary criticism and is historically located at the crossroads of structuralism and post-structuralism, in between structuralism and post-structuralism. Barthes seeks to describe a system of analysis which is based upon functional units, where narrative structure is viewed as being reflective of linguistic structure. As language got a structure, same like narrative also got structure, and it works upon functional units, and we have seen that functional units as functions, actions, and narratives in the last class. This methodology is broken down into hierarchical classifications that describe a larger framework where these levels interact. Meaning is derived from the relationships between various levels and units. We get the meaning out of a narrative from various levels, the relationship between various levels and units. The three basic levels of this system are functions, action, and narrative. Functions are the smallest unit of meaning and work together to form sequences, which in turn comprise action. I told you about certain words which describe the characters that can be the smallest units of meaning and work together to form sequences, which in turn comprise action. Characters are defined by their actions as opposed to their essence. Characters are defined by their actions, and then these characters are integrated into larger framework to form narrative, and from the actions and function narrative is formed. The stability of these units within the narrative, the stability of functions, action, and narrative within a narrative, within a story, make this view relevant in the genre studies also, to which genre it belongs. Narrative is the site of inquiry for Barthes because he seeks down to break down the narrative into its elements, into various functional units. Just as a sentence is the stopping point of analysis for linguistics, linguists analyze a sentence into its constituent elements. Barthes seen narrative, he also broken down a narrative into its elements, and he saw narrative as the end point of analysis of discourse. And to go outside of narrative means it is to go into the real world. Then it may require different other types of elements to break it down. Barthes uses the linguistics of discourse as means of codifying and explaining the narrative code that makes it possible to both produce and decipher narratives. By his narrative codes, various narrative codes we have seen, to decipher narrative is possible. In 1964, Elements of Semiology, he established a framework for analyzing all sign systems. Its primary contribution was to show that semiology could be used to analyze non-linguistic messages too. Any non-linguistic messages can also be decoded using semiology by studying its signs, by studying in the various levels of denotation and connotation. Any non-linguistic messages can also be decoded. He understood cultural objects as signifying system through a series of essays. He understood various cultural objects as signifying systems. The photographic message we have seen, that in about how a photograph shows different meanings, and the rhetoric of the image we have seen, the Panzani ad we have seen, the introduction to the structural analysis of narratives we have seen, how different codes were there to interpret a meaning or to decode meaning, the fashion system, another essay. So, photographic message in deals with journalistic photography. Then rhetoric of the image deals with the advertising images. And in the introduction to the structural analysis of narratives, it shows the literary narratives and how various meanings can be deciphered using the codes. Barthes valued meaning and the way of meaning making, how science gets meaning, and he devoted to exploration of hidden meaning, analyzing symbols, analyzing the connotated meaning, analyzing secondary meaning, and as well as the relationship between meaning and the form, signifier and signified. He found three layers of meaning in mass media: denotation we have seen, connotation we have seen, and in the connotation it comes cultural or ideological meaning of a message, and also myth we have seen. Remember our French practice of wine and his first effort to develop a systematic approach to the study of science. That means dealing with denotation and connotation. These meanings shape and reshape readers' ideology also and persuade them to accept the ideology of dominant class. Like how myth of drinking wine was circulated in the French among French people. Forms are plenty, meaning is simple. Meaning is of supreme importance. Okay, signifier is not so much important, but meaning, the concept has more importance. Meaning manipulates form. He was meaning oriented. If you want to give a particular meaning to a particular signifier, that is possible. For example, ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾക്ക് പഴയ സിനിമകളൊക്കെ എടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അപ്പം പറയാം ഞങ്ങൾ സന്തുഷ്ടരാണെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ മൂവി തന്നെ എടുക്കുകയാണ്. അതിൽ നമുക്ക് അത് സിനിമ ആ സമയത്ത് കാണുന്ന എല്ലാവരും ജയറാമിൻ്റെ ക്യാരക്ടറിനോടാണ് ഭയങ്കര സിമ്പതി തോന്നുക അല്ലേ. അത് എങ്ങനെയാണ്, ആ ഫോമിലാണ് ആ സിനിമ എടുത്തിരിക്കുന്നത്, അത് ഒരു പേട്രിയാർക്കൽ നേച്ചറിലാണ് എടുത്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. എന്നിട്ട് മീനിങ് നമ്മൾ ഡിറൈവ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ജയറാമിൻ്റെ പോയിന്റ് ഓഫ് വ്യൂവിൽ നിന്ന് ആണ്. So like that we can say this same thing is also applicable in literature also, or wherever you see the science meaning manipulates form. Structuralism concerns with the process of obtaining meaning, how meaning is derived. How we get the meaning is important than what is the meaning. How we get into that meaning is important according to structuralist. Deep structure is more important than the surface structure. Deep structure connotative meaning is more important. It focuses on the underlying pattern of meaning, underlying rules. Remember, long. It focuses on underlying pattern of how meaning is derived. As a structuralist, Barthes emphasizes on reconstruction of meaning. There is a meaning out of which Barthes is trying to reconstruct a meaning. A structuralist takes the object, he decomposes it, that means he divides into constituent elements, and finally he recomposes it. He recomposes again, then he gets into arrives at a meaning. When he arrives at the meaning, he finally understands that there is also connotative level of meaning. Barthes views that literature is mimesis, that is creating the same. It is the structure that makes the object visible and intelligible. Structure is very much important. That is why, like from that structure we get different meanings, and literature is just mimesis, that it is creating the same only. A structuralist performs two activities to make the text intelligible. Structuralist performs dissection and structuralist performs articulation. Dissection means separating each and every part of the text from each other, dividing it in its constituent elements. A poem is dissected into different parts and observes fragmented elements in total. Then elements are again arranged properly, which is called articulation. Structuralist believes in totality, and this very total is a structure. Everything has a structure. Structuralist activity is a bricolier which shows double functions. That means construction or creating a poem, the meaning again and again with the available constituent elements. First, they dismantle the original structure, then reconstruct it. That is the two functions. First, they dismantle original structure, then they reconstruct it, that elements are again arranged properly. A critic's activity is productive, creative, and reconstructive. Production of the meaning. A critic then does that, or the reader just reads it. When the reader reads a writerly text, he becomes a writer, he becomes a producer of the meaning. When a critic reconstructs, this new structure is simulacrum of previous structure. When a critic reconstructs the available text, this new structure is a photocopy, a simulacrum of previous structure. We saw that no earlier slide, literature is mimesis, creating the same. Meaning of text is based on surface structure directly concerned with underlying pattern. Underlying pattern is more important, but actually we first take the meaning from the surface structure. The structuralist activity of 1960, he defined structure as a simulacrum, substructure as a representation of the object in which something new occurs, a new structure is formed, a new meaning got derived. Simulacrum is the intellect added to the object because a new reason is being, a new meaning is being decoded by using structure, and this simulacrum making something appear which remained invisible, a new meaning may be produced, like a sign, it when it is got divided into its constituent elements, a different meaning got appeared. Same like that, a work also, narrative work also, when it was divided or it got new different meanings using 5 different codes, or a poem is divided and it got its denotative meaning, connotative meaning, or an image, photographic image is decoded, denotative image meaning, connotative meaning, or advertisement when it is decoded, denotative meaning, connotative meaning, like that. Simulacrum is the intellect added to the object, and it allows people to see something which remained invisible at that time. Dissecting the elements and associating them certainly belongs to totality, which is after all structure. The goal of structuralist activity is to reconstruct the object. It is actually reconstructing the object, it is actually recreating new meanings to the object. Structure is actually a photocopy of the object. Structure is actually a simulacrum of the object, a representation of the object. Structuralism is in a way of process of reconstruction. Object was there, it is again, it is dividing into its constituent elements and it is reconstructing. Text itself is unintelligible because there are all elements, when it gets divided it becomes unintelligible, and the structuralism makes it intelligible, and they believe in binary opposition through which meaning is produced. We are back into the discussion of semiotics again. It is the study of sign processes, meaning what signs signify and how what signs are communicating, as well as how meaning is constructed, understood. We have seen that semiotics can be applied to almost every aspect of life because what we see around us is sign and we interpret it in various ways. Signs are not only the visual aspect that we all immediately think of, but also extends to areas such as gestures, body language, music, clothes, poetry, paintings, food, anything you can associate with signs. ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു പർട്ടിക്കുലർ ഒക്കേഷനിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു ലേഡി വെള്ള സാരി ഉടുത്തിട്ട് നടക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഓരോരുത്തരുടെ മനസ്സിൽ ഓരോരോ സിഗ്നിഫൈഡ് ആയിരിക്കാം, എന്നാലും പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ചിലപ്പോൾ അതൊരു വിഡോൻ്റെ ഒരു സിമ്പിൾ ആവാം അല്ലേ. പിന്നെ വേറെ പിന്നെ ഒരു വൈറ്റ് ആൻഡ് വൈറ്റ് ഇട്ട് നടക്കുന്ന ഒരു ആളാണെങ്കിൽ പെട്ടെന്ന് നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാവും ചിലപ്പോൾ അയാളൊരു രാഷ്ട്രീയക്കാരനാണ് എന്നുള്ളൊരു സിഗ്നലാണ്. പിന്നെ ഫുഡ് അസോസിയേഷൻസ് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഫുഡ് ഇപ്പോൾ ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് മുടി നീട്ടി വളർത്തിയ ഒരാളാണെങ്കിൽ ഫ്രീക്കൻ എന്നൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ വിളിക്കും. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് എ സൈൻ ഓഫ് ലൈക്ക് ദാറ്റ്. ഫുഡ് ഇപ്പോൾ വെജിറ്റേറിയൻ ഫുഡ് ഒരാൾ എടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ചിലപ്പോൾ അത് അയാളുടെ കാസ്റ്റിനെ ഡിനോട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതായിരിക്കാം. അങ്ങനെ ഓരോ സൈനും ഓരോ മീനിങ് ആണ്, ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങളും ഓരോ സൈനാണ്, അതിനെല്ലാത്തിനും ഓരോരോ മീനിങ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. These are all considered to be signs that fall into the category of semiotics because they can all mean something other than the obvious meaning. അതെന്താണോ റെപ്രസെൻ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അതാവില്ല അതിൻ്റെ മീനിങ്, അതിന് വേറൊരു ലെവൽ ഓഫ് മീനിങ്ങും കൂടെ ഉണ്ട് ദാറ്റ് വി ഹാവ് സീൻ ഇൻ കൊണോട്ടേറ്റീവ് മീനിങ്. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ, ആൻ ആപ്പിൾ ക്യാൻ മീൻ ഹെൽത്തി ആൻഡ് എ ക്രൗൺ ക്യാൻ മീൻ കിങ് അല്ലേ. These meanings are however very dependent on the context in which they are referred to. ഓരോ കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിലും എന്താണോ ഓരോ വാക്കുകളുടെ സ്ഥാനം അതനുസരിച്ചിട്ടാണ് അതിന് മീനിങ് വരുന്നത്, അല്ലാണ്ട് അതിൻ്റെ ലിറ്ററൽ മീനിങ് ആവില്ല നമ്മൾ എടുക്കുന്നത്. ഓരോ കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റ് അനുസരിച്ചിട്ടായിരിക്കും മീനിങ് വരുന്നത്. Spots on your chest needs to be deciphered in a medical context. Road signs will be judged in a transport context, and according to Barthes' theory, every ideological sign is either a connotative sign system or a denotative sign system. A denotative sign, which is a strictly descriptive system, and denotative sign is the result of signifier image and the signified. So, sure in concept. and Barthes used it. In other words, the apple is a signifier, healthy is the signified. A connotative sign is one that has lost its historical meaning. It will not get its inherent meaning, not inherent meaning or the meaning which was associated from a longer time. Connotative sign, maybe it would be different meaning would be attributed because of the change in culture, the other rituals or events like that. Best way to describe the difference between signifier and signified maybe to look into Barthes' essay The World of Wrestling, which was published in his book Mythologies. In this essay, he describes the image portrayed by wrestlers and the resulting portrayal by the fans resulting from the wrestlers' image of wrestlers and the fans. And he states, as soon as the adversaries are in the ring, public is overwhelmed with the obviousness of the roles. And from that, that is a sign. The public is overwhelmed, and that is a sign. That is a signifier also. The description of the wrestler contains a number of signifiers. His physical image, that is of his physical features, a 50-year-old man with an obese body, a sagging body, and which is accompanied by his general mannerisms in that ring, are all signifiers. The immediate impression or immediate meaning we gained by these signifiers lead us to the signified, that his actions, his treacheries, or maybe we'll get a image of a villain too. And the impression we get of ugliness and evil by way of the signifier, by way of his mannerisms, or way by his physical image and signified form, we get the image of a villain through that wrestler. This example of a denotative sign system is easily dissected because we are seeing, people are witnessing. It is like a theatrical nature. People are witnessing his physical nature, his physical mannerisms, like that, a sign we get of a villain. So by using the signifier, his physical mannerisms or his physical image, physical body, we can get the sign of a villain. The ability to clearly define the signifier and signified, and therefore the sign, is not always so easily achieved. This is clarified further on in the essay. It has already been noted that in America, wrestling represents a sort of mythological fight between good and evil, how that like that we got the image of a villain as a sign. The same show being played out in another culture will likely have different results. It will not be the same meaning. Over the course of his career, Barthes reviewed his theory and even changed his mind about certain aspects. We have to learn this in deconstruction. Now he has reconstructed the work. Now he moved into deconstruction of that structure. And this evolution, as it has been referred to, shows that it was very much under scrutiny and social form. Given that in no way could be scientifically tested, many other scholars had their own opinions on the semiotic theories, study of signs. And either way, it was all very much how it was interpreted. The theoreticians were looking into the signs and how each sign differs. Each sign has its own meaning. So we are coming to the end of the discussion of Roland Barthes, and he is one of the most recognized names in the field of semiotics, and his theory has been the inspiration for many later theorists. And he rise to his fame by his book Mythologies, and which was a collection of essays. And science, he talked about science. Science range from speech, body language, symbols to paintings, music. Barthes' semiotic theory broke down the process of reading signs and focused on its interpretations by different cultures or societies. And according to Barthes, signs had both a signifier being the physical form of the sign as we perceive it through our senses, and we have the signified or meaning that is interpreted. So we will meet in the next discussion of structuralism in the next class. Happy learning.